really super excited about having Jon Black here. Let me give you a little background on him. And let me say, before I read this, sort of his background, you're going to think that he was sent from the future to make you feel bad about yourself. It's not true. He's just an awesome guy. All right, so Jon Black's he's found success in a lot of different industries in his career. So early in his career, he started a training and consulting company. Right, so that's one industry where he found success. He then started a marketing agency called Get Proof. He then moved into the healthcare industry and started a business that would allow people to get more information about their prospective doctors. Right, and that was called CheckMD. He then started a software company that helps businesses aggregate consumer reviews of that business. So the next thing to do naturally is to go into a high-tech agribusiness, which is what he did next. So he started an organic indoor food growing technology company that has been tremendously successful called Groviv, or is it Groviv?
Groviv.
Groviv. And I'm just getting warmed up. That's his business side. He did outstandingly well in his choice of a mate, who I don't see.
She's right here.
Oh, this is Shelly, and she's every bit Jon's match. She's also starting her own business, an entrepreneurial venture that has to do with ice cream. That's sort of on the early stages. And one other thing I want to say about Jon, he gives outstanding advice. I've heard secondhand things that he said to people. He's very insightful, gives outstanding advice. And then the last thing I'll say is he knows his way around a racetrack. This summer, a bunch of entrepreneurs and supporters of the university were in Las Vegas, and we raced fast cars. And I don't know, there's 18, 19 of us. These are all people who are very motivated, extremely competitive, and you can bet Jon Black, he didn't have the fastest car, right? He had a Porsche. There were Lamborghinis and Ferraris that technically were fastest lap went to Jon Black. So I don't want to overstate it, but he does everything perfectly well. That might be slightly overstated.
Too late.
He's an outstanding guy, and we're lucky to have Jon Black.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Yeah, too late to have already overstated. I'm following Mitt Romney, so no pressure at all, right? No, I consider myself a little guy, and honestly, this is not about me. I'm here to just share some of my experiences, and hopefully those experiences, we all learn together, right? We can all kind of glean something from those. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some freebies. I'm going to be asking you, okay, what did I learn in this situation? I'm just going to take kind of bits and pieces out of different companies. I've been an entrepreneur for some 25 years, something like that. So we'll take bits and pieces, see what we can learn from them. But right out of the gate, I'm going to just throw you some freebies that I think is some serious wisdom. Go ahead, next slide. So I'm going to recommend a couple of books. One is The Zigzag Principle by Rich Christensen. Great book. It talks about zigging and zagging. When you, for example, climb a mountain, you don't go straight up the mountain, right? You zig and then you zag, and you go like that. So you may have a goal at the top of the mountain, but the first step is the first zig. And part of what he talks about is, your first zig is profitability, and then you add resources and processes, and then you scale the business, for example. But also my career has been kind of zigging and zagging all over the place, and making mistake after mistake, failure after failure after failure that I've learned from and eventually led to some good things happening. So next slide. The next book that I didn't read until last year, fascinating to me because I didn't know that as an innovator, as an entrepreneur that kind of thought outside the box, way, way, way outside the box, that there was a process that I was using. I read this book. It studied hundreds of successful, like high-end, really super successful entrepreneurs, and said, we've created a process for what they do to innovate. They also did the same for companies. And they came up with some things associating, questioning, challenging the status quo, for example, observing, networking outside of your industry, and experimenting, which is kind of rapid prototyping. And all the while, talking to customers, they call it VOC, voice of the customer. And the voice of the customer is, first of all, on that last slide, this is just a phenomenal book. Essentially what they're saying is you don't have to have an innovator's DNA. Follow this process and they'll teach you how to innovate. So that's very cool. Next slide. So voice of the customer. I don't feel strongly about this at all, right? I threw this up there for a reason. Hey, if you have an idea, go talk to a customer, a potential customer. See what they say about it. They may shoot it down right away, then talk to another one, talk to another. And no matter where you are in the entrepreneurial cycle, I mean, you're here for a reason. It's not just about entrepreneurship, right? It's about jobs and resumes and interviews and all kinds of things. This is how you succeed. Ask a lot of questions, ask good questions and then better questions. Next slide. So I like to think of the Animal Olympics. You put your leopards in the running events, your fish in the swimming events, and eagles in the flying events, right? Figure out what your event is. Okay? I have a daughter that's not very good at math. But guess what? Her event is art, and she is excelling in art. She thought she was an idiot for years because she didn't know she had all this artistic talent. And I used to say, you know what? You're bummed because you're the fish. You're trying to be better than all the other fish, but you're an eagle. Find the event, and she did, and it's awesome. So find that event. That's really important, and then match it with your passion. What are you passionate about? Okay, very, very important. Match those two things. You're going to do great. In surrounding yourself with what you lack, something that I think I've done fairly well at. Because I'm very good at some certain things, but in surrounding myself with what I lack, in many cases I've given ownership in the company, right? And I've always looked at it. Would I rather have, if I'm starving, would I rather have a whole grape or a slice of a watermelon? Do I want 100% of the company, and this is my company, I own it, and nobody's going to tell me differently, or I'm going to spread the ownership around, the equity around, and say, you know what, let's do this together and surround myself with folks that are very, very good in their own discipline in their events. Next slide. So this is a fun one. P equals R minus C. Profit is equal to revenue minus cost. I was recently mentoring a technology company. I went in and they said, we can't seem to get new clients. We have the ones that we have love us, but we can't seem to get new clients. I said, okay, sell me, pitch me. And technology. And I was like, blah, 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 blah. I said, you know what? I wrote P equals R minus C on the board. I said, either you're increasing revenues or decreasing costs. Now you tell me, what does your technology do? It's one or the other, right? Oh, we decrease costs. In fact, we decrease costs by 23%. All of a sudden, he's selling me a solution that I care about, right? That I actually have a vested interest in as a potential client. Now I'm listening, right? Because he's talking about what I care about. Go ahead. So entrepreneurs, including me when I started, oh man, you get me started talking about one of my products and I was just all over it. I was way too enamored with my product and I talked way too much about the product, and I learned eventually to sell solutions, not products. This includes, do you know that a resume doesn't get you a job? It's not meant to get you a job. A resume is to get you in the door, right? Once you're in the door, guess what? Start putting yourself in their place and start thinking about, what's important to them? What can I do for you? How can I help you succeed? When you start asking questions about why they're hiring this position in the first place, for example, you're going to separate yourself from 85 to 90% of all of the other candidates because you're talking about what they need. You're talking about their language, and it's not about you. So next slide. So I apologize. Those are just a few nuggets I feel very strongly about, and I think there's some real wisdom in that. So let's talk a little bit about my career, and again, just some samples a little bit. I cut my teeth in business selling commodity raw materials with a buddy of mine from college in Connecticut. By commodity raw materials, what that means is everyone else has the same thing you have. In fact, the pricing for that particular product is listed in the Wall Street Journal. So how do you sell a product that everybody else has? I learned 4 things in this business. 1, business is about building and maintaining relationships of trust. Okay, how do you do that? You do what you say you're going to do. That's how you do it. And to me, that's the definition of integrity. You do what you say you're going to do. And if you can't, if for some reason you cannot do what you say you're going to do, pick up the phone. Meet face to face. Do not email, do not text, do not in any other communication. This is a time where you say, look, I know I told you this, but I'm not able to because of, X and Y. And you know what? Let's talk face to face about that, right? In this business, we were shipping products. We were the largest importer of a product called antimony oxide in the United States. The company consisted of myself, my buddy Dave, and 2 office staff. We did just under $20 million a year in sales. It took me a year and a half to make my first sale. You believe that? A year and a half. But by then, I had a lot of relationships of trust, and actually, some of those relationships, this was, 20-something years ago, I still maintain those relationships. We became friends. So, business is about building and maintaining trust. Number 2, be yourself. One thing that I couldn't do in that industry, especially when I first got there, I knew nothing about the industry. So to go in and to purchasing agents and things like that and act like I knew what I was talking about was just not me. It just wasn't who I was. So I would ask the buyers, I would say, look, I really don't know much about this industry. I'm just starting out. Would you mind kind of taking me under your wing and teaching me about this? Okay, we're selling commodities. How many slick salesmen are coming in going, hey, I'll cut that price by a half a penny a pound. And guess what? Boom, they're on it, right? Because they're buying on price. And I'm coming in saying, maybe you can help me out. Maybe you can teach me. Eventually, you get your product approved in that particular location for that company. And then eventually, be yourself. And eventually, number 3, ask good questions that challenge the status quo. So once I was approved at a company, then I started asking, is there anything that we could do to this product to make it better for you? All of a sudden, you start finding commonalities between this particular client and maybe a dozen others. And they all say, if you could add selenium, if you could make it agglomerate less or whatever the case may be. And so I go back to the manufacturer and say, hey, I think that if you can tweak it this way, that our customers will be more loyal to us because the product is going to be better even though it's a commodity. So I started learning to ask very, very good questions. Part of the number 1 question that I would ask is if you could wave a magic wand and do anything with this product, what would you do? And man, that worked really, really well. And again, we had some success because of that. And then eventually I learned to ask better questions. I started out, my territory when I first started with Weber Company was in New England. And we were sourcing products from all around the world. And eventually I started asking the companies that we were buying products for and reselling to other manufacturers. I would say, well, you've got to buy some products somewhere to get your raw materials, right? And so I started sourcing products for my manufacturer, and then I would buy their products for U.S. manufacturers, and essentially we were kind of making money coming and going because I learned to ask better questions. So why am I telling you about a company that I cut my teeth in business, but it wasn't my company. I was never an owner. It was not entrepreneurial in the sense that I was an employee and I worked for somebody else. Why am I telling you that story? Yeah.
Takeaways that you got from that experience. The takeaways you got from that experience that allowed you to translate that into your success is
Absolutely. Yeah, I learned a lot. Excellent. Anything else? Don't be shy. Yeah.
I think you need to learn to be a good employee before you can be a good employer also.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. One up here. Yeah.
So what I thought was you learn from everyone. You can learn from your teachers, you can learn from business failures, you can learn as an employee or as a student. You don't just have to learn as a student. You can learn just as an employee, and you have to be teachable.
Excellent. Yeah, perfect. All very, very good answers. No matter where you are, where you work, I want you to think like an entrepreneur, right? I want you to think, what's the P equals R minus C, profit is equal to revenue minus cost, of the person with whom I'm interacting. Whether it's an interview, whether it's a customer, potential customer, an employer, wherever you are, I want you to think like an entrepreneur. And you're right, you can learn anywhere. So pay attention. So the next company, and again, next really just experience that I want to talk to you about is a training consulting company. My passion, I wanted to bless people's lives. I left and kind of went out on my own because I wanted to help people and bless people. And we created a financial product that helped folks manage their money a little better. The product got some national recognition and attention. We created a training around that product. And eventually that led to a large company asking us to deliver training across up and down the eastern seaboard. So that was the good news. The bad news is that company got acquired by a company who already had their own trainers. So we lost the contract. But in the meantime, I got a consulting opportunity with a bunch of techies. Okay, large technology company. Techies come to me and they say, hey, can you come in and help us? So they had some ideas, and they were trying to take those ideas to senior executives, to the C-suite. And again, they were speaking their technology language. And I was perfect because I didn't have a background in technology at the time. And so I came in and I said, so tell me what you're trying to do. And man, their technology speak was like, I didn't understand, like 3 out of 4 words, I had no idea what they were talking about. And so I would have to say, back up, back, beep, 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 but back it up, right? And I would have to understand eventually I learned technology just trying to understand them. But once I kind of got it, I was like, man, this is a really good idea. And they're like, yeah, nobody will listen to us. So I just helped write a business plan and kind of formulate a presentation to take back to the senior executives that, guess what, had to do with P equals R minus C, right? What do the executives want to hear? They don't care about the technology. They want to hear how it's going to help them either increase revenues or decrease costs. So the really good news about that is that it led to a business unit, a division, that was, last I heard, doing over $250 million a year. So the techies had it right. It wasn't just a good idea. It was a great idea, and it's made that company lots of money. So what did I learn as a consultant? Any ideas? A guy with an entrepreneurial spirit that consults. Thoughts? What?
You got to translate it into what people understand.
Okay, yeah, certainly. Anything else? So I got paid for my time, and that was great. I learned that consultants get paid for their time. And as a guy with an entrepreneurial spirit, I thought, as an entrepreneur, sometimes, hopefully, I get paid for the amount of risk I take, right? If I do things right. So the next consulting opportunity I had, created some IP and eventually got an opportunity to become a partner owner in the next business, and went back to being an entrepreneur because I said, hey, I think there's a little more money in that, at least for me. So I learned something there. Next company was GetProof. So it was a credentialing software company. Again, this was the company that I started consulting for and then became a partner and owner in the business. And so they had credentialing software. What credentialing is a way for hospitals and insurance companies, which are called affiliations of doctors, to do background checks, essentially verify their doctors, and they're government mandated to do so every 2 years. So each doctor has on average 28 affiliations, And so on average, each doctor was going through a credentialing process of verification 15 times per year. It was insane. But that's what our software did. And it was great. The problem is that 54% of all malpractice payouts are paid by 5% of the physicians. Okay? They're the bad eggs in the system. They are the ones that are doing what we call sentinel events. Sentinel events are they're cutting off the wrong leg, they're operating on the wrong body part, they're drunk in an operating room, they are operating on the wrong patient. I mean, it happens all the time, okay? 54% by 5% of the physicians. So if my passion is to help and bless lives, and in this case I feel like I'm helping to save lives because of the industry I was in, by the way, at the same time that I was giving a speech at the City of Hope Cancer Institute in Southern California, which is one of our clients, I'm up there talking about saving lives, and I see these rolling IVs in the tops of the windows as I'm speaking, and my dad was going through cancerous brain tumor at the time. So I had a lot of passion about this. But it was such an inefficient process that we started to ask our customers, again, some really good questions. And the questions were, what if we could create a continuous credentialing model where rather than doing all these different credentialing events, what if we could push data from national databases, Sentinel event databases to you, and within 48 hours of a Sentinel event of a doctor that you employ, you would be notified that at Hospital X, he had a Sentinel event, you're at Hospital Y. So you could find out about it sooner and make sure that you're protecting your patients and patient safety, et cetera. And our customers across the board, keep in mind we were talking to the credentialing staff, the head of the departments, it would change everything. Would you buy it? Absolutely. How much would you pay? Well, do the math, right? Right now, we're spending $5,000 on each credentialing event we do, and that's all they did. So I thought, there's a real opportunity. Based on that information, we created a push model technology that monitored Sentinel event databases and pushed that information to all 28 affiliations of each and every doctor. Okay, very cool. So we go into basically sell. We had all these beta customers, and they're going, "This is unbelievable." We're like, "Okay, here's your invoice. We're ready to roll." Okay, well, let us just get approval by the C-suite. Wait a second. You didn't say that before. Well, you never asked. Okay, so they go up to the C-suite and they show, and we do a big presentation, and essentially, so this is my interpretation of what happened. Okay, C-suite are executives. We're talking about hospitals here, and they're executives. Essentially, I'm going to actually read this. Are you saying that we would have to take action that by monitoring this database, if you had an event at Hospital X and we're Hospital Y, we would have to take action on a doctor who is a revenue generating asset up to 2 years before we were government mandated to do so? Well, yeah, he just operated on the wrong patient. This is not, medical error. These are blatant problems, right? And let me just tell you, these executives chose revenues over patient safety time after time after time after time. What did I learn from that? Help me out. Anyone? Was I asking, what questions was I asking? The wrong ones. My questions weren't good enough. Will you buy this? Absolutely. This will change the industry. This will change everything. So we went at great cost and built it, and then came back. Oh, we need to get this approved by the C-suite. What was that? Yeah, I think I was asking the right people, but I didn't ask them, are there any approvals that you need to make? Anyone else? Can you make the decision? I didn't ask that question, so we ended up spending a lot of money. So anyway, good learning experience. So going to talk about Terillian for a second. I'm still working on my passion. Now we're trying to save lives by creating and gathering a physician database and making all physician data, good news, bad news, SentinelVet, et cetera, available to the public on the internet. First time that it had ever been done. And the whole idea was, let's let the public do the research and find and weed out the 5% that are responsible for the majority of malpractice payouts. And then by using Google Reviews technology, we will promote the good doctors, we know who they are, and we will further distance them from the bad doctors. So still trying to make a difference, right? So if you can show the monster video. Yeah, it's called Monster. Yeah.
To a 5-year-old, it looks like this. To a teenager, it looks like that. And a millionaire? Definitely like this. We asked a highly successful surgeon what his looked like. It wasn't this, or even this. What keeps him up at night is this, and that. Well, okay, let's back up a bit. First, this doctor who thousands of patients call Dr. Awesome. They love him, adore him, and would even have a national holiday pass if they could. But these people live here, offline. Problem is, we now search online. These four seem harmless, but online, they represent how the world sees Dr. Awesome. They attack his reputation like vicious monsters, painting Dr. Awesome to be not so awesome. Who are these monsters? Did they ever visit Dr. Awesome? Maybe, but no one really knows. Dr. Awesome is afraid because online reputations matter, and no one sees the opinions of his offline customers. But what if we could see offline opinions? What if verified customers wrote the majority of your reviews? What if you could be honestly represented online? Now you can. Terillian collects, validates, and broadcasts the opinions of your real customers. It's that simple. Whether your business is online or offline no longer matters. Everyone uses the internet to find you. Let the voices of your customers drive new business to your door. Call it Monster Insurance. Bring your offline online with Terillian.
Okay, impressions? Thoughts on the video? Did it make sense? Okay, and we all search for doctors online, right? Yeah.
Why do you say customers, not patients in the video?
Why did we not say patients? We were gearing up to go outside of healthcare and go to local businesses as well with this. Good question. Okay. Here's the point that I want to make. This business failed. It was the worst failure of my career. And man, it was rough, let me tell you. So at the time, in 2009, the whole market changed. We lost our funding. I mean, it was just brutal. And after that, I kept trying to give my investors another chance. And I kept trying to make it work. And I could never catch up. And eventually, we didn't make it. But during that time, I had a lot of friends who were driven into bankruptcy, et cetera. And in many cases, you know, their wives left them. So let me just tell you, you learn from failure. This was a tough one to learn. Why? Because we were so far into it, we'd spent a lot of money getting there, and but eventually it just didn't work. My wife, Shelley, chose to stick with me. I mean, it was a rough time. Okay, so what did I learn? I'm just gonna say, you know, I learned at that time, hey, fail faster, right? Fail faster, and it's actually you know, really, really important. So let's talk about my last venture, which is called Grovive. Yeah, not yet. Let's just okay. There we go. So next slide. So Grovive. I'll skip to the end really quick. So. The company was acquired by a public company, and you know, there's a lot of really, really exciting stuff happening even right now with the company. I went through a transition, no longer with the company, but have a vision and a passion that is just insatiable. It's really cool. Back when we were just introduced to this, I'm going to just kind of tell you the quick story first. So I had lunch with a guy that had been trying to grow food indoors without the sun, using artificial light. He'd been doing it for several years, and he'd never been able to make it pencil. That's really interesting. I wonder why. And we'll talk about the research and what we found in terms of, why. But within a few Google searches, looking at the industry, farming industry or agriculture industry as a whole, here's what we found. Next slide. 3% of the global land surface can be considered as prime or class 1 growing land. That is not sustainable, okay? Next. 75% of African farmland is severely depleted of the basic nutrients needed to grow crops. Okay, that number just kept getting worse and worse and worse. Next. These are, again, just a few Google searches. Let's see what we can find. 70% of all water is used for irrigation. How much of that actually gets to the plant, do you think? Not very much, okay? Water shortage in China. China's freshwater resources are 75% less than the world average. These are big problems, right? Worldwide problems. Next. And 1.8 billion people using a drinking water source contaminated with feces. Okay? 500,000 deaths a year. These were big problems. So just right out of the gate after lunch, I think there's an opportunity here, right? But let's kind of research the industry a little more and see what we find. Next slide. So at one point, we decided that we were going to create a BHAG, a vision that was beyond anything we could ever imagine or dream. And that vision was that we were going to somehow feed and nourish the world. We had no idea how we were going to do it. But we decided, we brought two groups together, and we decided, hey, this is going to be our vision, and this is where we're going to go. Go ahead, next slide. So the concept here is to eliminate the variability and uncertainty of traditional farming by growing crops indoors without having to rely on the sun, the weather, or the seasons. Okay, 24/7 growing, 365 days a year, no seasons needed. That's the concept, okay? And there was vertical growing going on throughout the world, and in the United States, there were several very, very large companies with very deep pockets that were doing what is called vertical growing, the next step in the evolution of farming. Indoor growing is greenhouses. We're talking about vertical growing. So next slide. So we started to do some research. We started to knock doors, talk to customers. First thing, hey, let's go visit Farm to Here. They were the #1 indoor grow facility at the time. They're in Chicago. And this is a picture of their facility. So essentially, the lights that are growing those plants are so hot that they have to be about 4 feet above the plants, which gives them in a monster facility only about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels up, okay? And you're losing photosynthesis. The higher you get above the plant, you're losing photosynthesis. You can also see that you can drive a truck through the aisle. Why? Because they needed to disperse the heat. Meanwhile, they've got tens of thousands of dollars, if not more, in air conditioning units all over the roof because they had to cool that place down, right? So why wasn't there a single indoor grow facility at the time that was profitable in the entire United States? We looked at that and we said, if we could, I don't know, build lights with less heat, wouldn't that make a difference? Well, let's check it out. Next slide. Oh, and by the way, they were selling leafy greens to local grocery stores and restaurants. Every single one of them, leafy greens to local grocery stores and restaurants. I don't know about you guys, but the margins in grocery stores are not very good. I don't know. Next slide. Okay, so let's just talk about the technology for a minute. This is what they were trying to do, mimic the sun. Okay? This is kind of the spectra, the wavelengths. This is what the sun at midday and the perfect growing season looks like. Next slide. So we asked, again, we're asking questions, right? We started, by the way, trying to build a grow light, and we thought, oh, we'll sell grow lights. Okay? We went to a bunch of knocking doors, voice of the customer, went to a bunch of indoor growing customers. They didn't believe our specs. They said, this is impossible. There's no way that your light has these specifications. You don't have enough heat to do anything. So they just flat out didn't believe us. So we just said, well, let's just kind of see what we can do on our own in terms of growing. And this is what we found. Guess what? The plant doesn't need the entire intensity of the sun each and every day. It just needs, in fact, all plants are different, but the plants that we were looking at just needs a little bit over here in the blue spectra and a little bit over here in the red. It doesn't need all the rest. So if we can tweak the dials, right, there might be a lot less heat. Next. So I started out saying, I met with a guy that had been trying to do it for years, hadn't been profitable, okay? I had done some consulting for a technology group that had been working on LED lights for car dealerships, to light up a car dealership at night. And their whole concept was, we built a light that has less heat and therefore less energy and therefore less cost to our clients, the car dealerships. Okay, association. Hey, they did this in this industry. I wonder if they could help us build a light for this industry. We think there's a gap. We went to them. Not only did they build to spec, but they did much, much more than that. And that whole grape and slice of watermelon, hey, let's get together. You guys are amazing. I could never do what you guys do. I mean, geniuses, just brilliant. And so we brought those two groups together and formed a company. And now we're growing ourselves in an abandoned office, and we just got a few racks up, and we're going, this is amazing. Wow, this is incredible. Of course, before we got there, we had to figure out germination. So we do research on germination. What does that mean? You take a seed, you're supposed to put it in a dark room for 5 days until, boop, a little plant sticks out and it germinates. Then you can put it under the lights. So that was the conventional wisdom. You take it from this room to this room. We said, well, that's stupid. What? I mean, you just moving things around in a grow house, just put them under the lights. You don't have to turn the lights on. Okay? So we did that. We blacked out all the windows so there's no light going in there. And then it was like, well, what if the wavelengths actually kind of agitated the seeds and made them germinate faster? We were idiots. We didn't know what we were doing. We weren't farmers. Okay? That's a good thing. It wasn't our case because we just kept challenging the status quo. And guess what? We went from 5 days to 3 days to a day and a half. And you know what? They're germinating in 18 hours right now. Okay? Amazing. But there were things that we didn't figure out until we took the next zag or zig, right? In this case, our plants were growing right up into the lights and not getting burned because the lights were almost cool to the touch. I mean, it was just amazing technology. So we had something that we thought, hey, this might just work. Next slide. So the theory was we had something that really could work and it could be profitable. Next. And these were some of our assumptions. We thought, hey, if we truly are getting the results that we are, maybe this is what we could do. Wow, that'd be really cool, right? No herbicides, no pesticides, no genetic modifications. We think we really have something here. Next slide. But without a customer, who cares? Right? We were doing all this stuff in our little office and we're going in at 4 o'clock in the morning to water. And I mean, when are your watering times? Oh, I don't know. What were they last time? Well, let's look at the log. Oh, they were this. Well, let's tweak it by this. I mean, right? Boom, 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 boom. And we just kept getting better and better at what we were doing. But without a customer, it means absolutely nothing. Next. So the first folks that we reached out to, local grocery stores and restaurants. Guess what? We started doing the math like this. There is no way. Because we still had a lot of labor to get the plants that were growing so fast, by the way. We said 10 to 30 harvests. Eventually, we had 52 harvests a year. Seed to harvest, 52 harvests per year. Okay? I asked some wheatgrass farmers, actually traditional farmers, 3 different farmers in the U.S., the top wheatgrass farmers in the U.S., how many harvests do you have per year? I figured they had maybe 2.5. They'd grow, cut, and maybe get a little bit more. No, 1 harvest per year, okay, because they had a growing season. They grew it, cut it, they were done, right? So even though we were growing things so fast, it still didn't pencil because of our labor. Next. Okay, leafy greens, local grocery stores and restaurants isn't working. Is there anyone else that buys plants? Who else buys plants? We're in Utah County, Nutraceutical companies. They buy plants all day long because their products are plant-based. Hey, let's go talk to some nutraceutical companies. We show up on the door of a nutraceutical company, we're knocking doors, voice of the customer, whatever you want to call it. And essentially what we said is, hey, what keeps you up at night? If you could wave a magic wand, what product would you grow? What are you trying to grow but can't, but think would be a great market? Well, there's this ancient grain called...
Would you mind defining nutraceutical and maybe give an example or two just in case somebody doesn't?
Sure. Young Living, New Skin, green shakes, smoothies, vitamins that are all plant-based. Make sense? Okay. Yeah, thank you. There's a lot of network marketing companies in Utah County, and the majority of them have plant-based, or in other words, natural products. Okay, natural, organic, etc. So we're asking them. They said, actually, there's a product called einkorn that we're trying to grow in greenhouses, and we just can't grow enough to make a market. We said, oh, well, can you give us some seeds and let us try it? And they're like, yeah, sure, go away. They just thought, you won't be able to do it. They were growing einkorn in between 6 and 8 weeks. And so we failed a bunch, and then eventually, within a 2-week period, we came back with these trays that were just beautiful. I mean, full, lush, green. They were just beautiful. We'll see it on the next screen. Go ahead. So this is in their greenhouses. You can see this is our tray. Our tray looks greener, fuller, taller. I mean, it was beautiful, right? So we come in with these beautiful trays that we had grown in 2 weeks. It takes them 6 to 8 weeks to grow in their greenhouse, which they think is the perfect controlled growing environment. And we come in and we go, hey, this group we had some failures, but we grew it pretty well. And they didn't believe us. They just flat out didn't believe that we could have grown something in 2 weeks, and so they threw it out right in front of us. And then they said, okay, here's some more seed. We don't think that you've got another stash on the side, so here's some more seed, do it again. So we went and did it again. We grew it in 10 days. And eventually we grew it in 9 days, by the way. But we grew it in 10 days. We came back in 10 days. We had 2 trays, beautiful, lush, green and everything. They still didn't believe it. We said, okay, tell you what. We'll take some of yours and we'll take some of ours. We'll send it out to an independent third-party lab called Covance Labs in Chicago and let them come back with A/B testing. It'll be easy, right? So they came back. Next slide. They came back with side by side. Guess what? We did really, really well. Okay, I mean, triple-digit increases in a lot of the nutrients was a good thing, right? Keep going. Next. But there were a couple of areas that we were low in. So we said, I wonder if we could raise those areas while keeping everything else the same. Next slide. Yeah, we did, and it worked. Wow, does that mean we could grow to spec? Could we get a specification from a nutraceutical company and grow to that specification? Oh my gosh, I think we've really got something here, right? Surprise, surprise. So from seed to root to stem to leaf to flower, we give each and every plant exactly what it needs when it needs it, right? So it germinates faster. The stem grows faster, et cetera, whatever stage it's in. Next slide. So then we started to ask better questions. Okay, they would ask us, do you have radish? Can you grow radish? Next. Well, what active ingredient are you looking for? Next. Oh, well, there's this enzyme that helps with gut health, and really we need the radish for that enzyme. Oh, I wonder if we can grow to the spec of that enzyme. Guess what? When we first tested it, hey, more than 2 to 1. That's a pretty big deal when they get to order less radish and get more of what they really want, which is about an active ingredient next. So then we said, okay, not just talking about lights or just one piece of the puzzle, nutrients, what if we could control the entire environment? What if we could tweak the air conditions and everything? And I wonder what that looks like. Next slide. So we became the first company in the world that we know of to grow to spec naturally, without genetic modifications, without chemical extracts, free of heavy metals, herbicides, pesticides, and certified organic. Very cool. Next. We would customize phytonutrients without genetic modifications. Next. And we called it growth perfected. Next. Okay, so now I want to show you, it's called the brand teaser video, a video that we did when we just had the vision. We really didn't have much more than that. So we just had the vision, and we didn't really have any assets to show. There's only one piece that shows any kind of assets, but go ahead.
Life anywhere, independent of Mother Nature. And the human fingerprint will be a beautiful trademark. One day, the world will eat as sure as the sun rises, making starvation a thing of the past. One day, agricultural disease will only be found in textbooks. And growing something more profitable will also mean making it more safe. One day, we'll crack the code to perfect growth. One day is today.
So kind of fun. It was a really fun video to make, but next slide, or next video. And while he's pulling that up, let me just say that our genius partners figured out a way, just pause that for a second. Again, we were just talking about the controlled environment, and we tried it, but the labor costs were astronomical. So again, the geniuses that were my partners figured out a way to automate the growing process, and this is what that looks like. This is really the first rendering. So you've got an automatic seeder. Perpetual or sustainable food machine, right? Wouldn't it be cool if you could put that in a third world country and they could come with their trays on top of their heads maybe and, give an empty tray and come back with a full tray of food, of sustainable, good food with all the nutrients in the world? Very cool stuff. Okay, next slide. So essentially this is what we end up with. Our fully automated indoor farms will feed and nourish the world. That's our vision, right? Right now, in an approximately 25 by 25 space, our automated indoor farms are producing the equivalent of 100 acres of farmland using a mere 2% of the water used in traditional farms. Very cool. I'm proud to be a part of it, and let me tell you, I could have never even imagined a lot of this early on. We first zigged and then we zagged, and eventually asking the right questions, we came up with a solution. And there was a lot of us, right? Not just me, but a lot of us. And so just quick gratitude, thanks to our acquirer, New Skin and Richwood, for seeing the vision and carrying on that vision. I just want to say thanks to my wife for supporting me throughout all this, and to my partners, my investors, and all those that showed trust in me. I really appreciate that. And finally, you heard about my big failure When we were in Atlanta, in business, because it's a Bible Belt, folks talked about their Lord and Savior all the time. And it was like totally cool and fine to do that in the Bible Belt. Somehow when we moved here, it was all of a sudden not as cool to share your religion. I just want to say this isn't about religion. This is about, in my darkest hour, my Lord and Savior was there for me. So that's just about my personal relationship with Him, and I just want to thank Him and thank you for the opportunity. I'll come back over here. So we've got a...
So let me just say this quickly. That presentation that you saw would have been outstanding if he had been a huge jerk, just based on the merits of right? But he's also just an outstanding person, as you can tell. So in recognition and